The sound hit me before I even made it to the edge of the field. Metal on metal, diesel coughing through the morning. And for a second, I thought maybe I'd woken up in somebody else's nightmare. But no, this was mine. I rounded the old oak tree and froze. Bulldozers, an army of them, cutting straight into the soil my grandfather's hands had built a life on. You know what a punch in the gut feels like? For me that morning, it was worse. Like somebody grabbed the whole story of my family and chewed it up under steel treads, and just for good measure, ground it into the dirt. Standing in front of those machines, looking small but smug, was Madeline Green, the woman in charge of Maple Ridge Estates HOA. Arms crossed, lips curled, wearing that grin of someone who finally pulled one over on the world. "This is legal," she said, her voice high and sweet as poison. "You're not in control anymore." I wanted to scream, to run at her, to do something. Anything, but all I could do was stand there, fists clenched, watching my whole history get turned to rubble. That's how my war with the HOA started. Name's Ethan Carter. I'm the last Carter still working Somerset Valley's biggest chunk of farmland. More than 500 acres my family's held for 2 centuries. Corn, soybeans, a patch of orchard, a vineyard, and more memories than I could stack in a lifetime. After my granddad died, everyone figured I'd sell to the first developer who came calling. They were wrong. This land was my inheritance, but it was also my backbone, something you carry in your blood, not just your name. But the world started closing in, slow and steady. A couple years back, a developer built Maple Ridge Estates right up against us. Fancy houses, tall gates, the kind of people who file noise complaints if your tractor runs at sunrise. I never joined their HOA, didn't sign up for their rules or their drama, but that didn't matter to folks like Madeline. First time I met her, she stomped up my driveway with a stack of paperwork and that patronizing smile, telling me I'd have to register my livestock as service animals because of some rule about community noise. She also said I owed 4 months of HOA dues. I stared at her like she'd just landed from Mars. I said, "Lady, you got the wrong guy. My family was here before your houses had plumbing. I'm not part of your HOA, and I never will be." She didn't like that at all. For a minute, I thought she'd give up. But Madeline doesn't get bored. She gets even. A couple weeks passed, and I found out just how far she'd go. This time she didn't bring lawyers. She brought bulldozers and a construction crew. The moment I saw those machines, I ran, waving my arms, yelling for them to stop. They didn't even slow down. Madeline followed behind, barking something about eminent domain and community progress. I was furious, helpless, lost in a storm of anger and fear. I shouted, "You can't do this!" But she just laughed, like I was some punchline, and said, "You'll hear from our attorneys. Unless you pay your dues, this is our land now." My hands were shaking, my heart racing. I didn't trust her, not with the law, not with my home. That night, I called my lawyer. By the next morning, we'd filed for an emergency injunction. Sheriff showed up, finally got those machines off my land. But the fields, acres of corn crushed, the edge of my vineyard torn up, looked like a battlefield. It rained that night, turning everything to mud. The land I loved now scarred and dangerous. I stood in the wreckage, thinking of my granddad's words. "This land doesn't belong to me. I belong to it." All I could think was, these outsiders, these paper pushers, thought they could take what generations had built, just because they wanted it. But here's where it gets crazy. In court, Madeline rolled in with a folder thick as a phone book, her lawyer putting on a whole show about public good and shared responsibility. Then they dropped a stack of papers in front of the judge, claiming my granddad had signed over part of our land to the HOA for beautification projects. One problem, the signature was dated a year after my granddad died. I saw red. My family's name, forged right in front of a judge. My lawyer, bless him, almost laughed, held up the death certificate and said, "Unless the deceased is doing business from the afterlife, this is blatant fraud." You could actually watch the color drain from Madeline's face. The judge flipped through the paperwork, then started picking apart every lie. Not only had they forged my granddad's name, but half the witnesses had moved away years ago. The notary's name was misspelled. Dates didn't match up. The whole thing unraveled right there. The court ordered them off my property, made them pay for damages, and kicked off a fraud investigation into the HOA. You'd think that would be enough, right? But Meline, spiteful as ever, started filing complaints everywhere. Code enforcement, immigration, the IRS, accusing me of everything from hiring illegal workers to violating water rights. Every time, the officials left shaking their heads, realizing it was all just games. Meanwhile, more and more people started poking around Meline's business. That's when the real twist hit. Turned out she'd been skimming HOA dues, funneling money into offshore accounts while waging her little war against me. Suddenly, the whole HOA board was under investigation. At the final hearing, I watched as Meline, power suit, but looking tiny, was led away in handcuffs. Cameras flashed, neighbors whispered. Nobody would look me in the eye except for old Mr. Jacobs, a farmer down the road, who just gave me a nod that said everything words couldn't. There's something hollow about a win like that. My land would never look the same, but I got it back. And for once, justice landed where it belonged. People like Meline don't care about community. They care about power, about controlling what isn't theirs. The minute someone stands up to them, they start to fall apart. Maple Ridge Estates HOA dissolved in lawsuits and shame. These days, I walk my fields, boots heavy in the mud, thinking about what we lost and what we fought for. Sometimes the right thing doesn't feel like a win. Sometimes it just feels like standing your ground when nobody else will. And if you want to know the real lesson in all this, it's that not all fences are about keeping people out. Sometimes, they're there to keep the wrong folks from getting in. So let me ask you, what do you think? Was I right to fight, or was there a better way? Tell me your thoughts about justice, about power, about what we owe the places that make us who we are. I want to hear where you stand, because in the end, maybe that's what community really means. Let me back up a sec, because if you think the end of Maple Ridge's HOA was the end of my troubles, well, that's not quite how life works out here. Yeah, watching Meline and her crew get hauled off felt like justice. But in a small town, nothing ever stays simple. Scars run deeper than court orders, and I guess no one ever tells you about the aftermath. How neighbors start picking sides, how even a victory can feel like another fight just waiting to happen. First, there were the stares, some curious, some cold, some that just slid right past me like I'd turned invisible. I used to wave at folks every morning, but now, pulling into the old feed store, I could feel conversations stall, eyes flicker my way, and then dart off. A couple of the Maple Ridge folks, people I barely knew, honestly, started coming up to my fence, not with threats, but with questions, awkward apologies, sometimes even casseroles in hand. One woman, Mrs. Hartley, stood there with her little boy tugging at her sleeve and just blurted out, "I'm sorry for everything." We had no idea what she was really doing. That kind of thing throws you. I wanted to snap back, to tell her that not knowing isn't the same as not responsible, but I just nodded and tried to keep the peace. Truth is, after everything, I was tired. Tired of fighting, tired of being angry, tired of always having to explain that this land was never for sale, not at any price. But wounds have a way of festering if you ignore them. You know what I mean? The county came through and patched up the worst of the field damage, sent out a few polite letters about working toward community healing. But it's hard to heal when you're still stepping over busted fence posts and seeing the scars in your own backyard. I spent weeks walking the fields, mending what I could. There was a morning, sun not even up yet, air thick with that smell of damp earth, when I found a Maple Ridge teenager painting over the graffiti someone had sprayed on my barn. He looked at me, brush in hand, like a deer caught in headlights, and then said, "Mr. Carter, I'm sorry. Some kids just went too far." He kept working, and I just let him. Didn't say a word. Little moments like that, scattered between the mess, started to shift something inside me. Not forgiveness, exactly, but maybe the start of letting go. Meanwhile, the investigation into the HOA kept churning. News trucks parked out by the old diner, reporters pestering anyone with a pulse. Stories came out, stolen money, threats, backdoor deals with contractors. Maple Ridge became a dirty word. People started whispering that maybe the HOA wasn't about protecting their neighborhood at all, but just about power, about fear. And when fear loses its grip, it turns on itself. That I got a letter from Matt Line, believe it or not, mailed from the county jail. It was short, almost desperate. "I'm sorry. I thought I was doing the right thing for the community." I read it a couple times, then stuck it in a drawer. I don't know if I'll ever answer. Some ghosts are better left on paper, but not all fallout was ugly. With the HOA gone, folks who'd been too scared to speak up before started coming around. Old-timers from the valley, young families wanting to plant gardens instead of obsessing over fence heights and mailbox colors. I saw a little more laughter at the Saturday market, people sharing eggs and jam, swapping stories again. Even got invited to a Maple Ridge picnic. Didn't go, but it was something. Of course, not everyone was ready to forgive. Some of the angriest HOA supporters packed up and left, put "for sale" signs out front, and blamed me for ruining their American dream. Maybe they were right in a way. Maybe I did ruin the kind of dream where rules matter more than people, where history is something you bulldoze instead of honor. That's a hard truth to swallow. You know, there was one more twist. Didn't see it coming at all. The county offered to buy a slice of my land to turn into a public park, a space where anyone from Maple Ridge or Somerset Valley could walk, picnic, just breathe for a while. At first, I bristled. After all this, why should I give up one more inch? But then I remembered my granddad's words. Land's no good if you keep it all to yourself. So I said yes. Gave up a corner, planted new apple trees, watched kids from both sides of the old feud climb the fence and laugh in the sun. Some days, I still catch myself looking out across the fields, expecting another fight to roll up the driveway. Maybe that's just the way life is when you've stood your ground a little too long. But sometimes, late in the evening, when the fields glow gold and the world goes quiet, I think maybe we all learned something, painful as it was. So now I'll ask you again. What would you have done in my shoes? Would you have fought for every inch, or found a way to forgive? Is there such a thing as winning when the cost is this high? Drop your thoughts below, because I've told you my side, and now I want to hear yours. Maybe together, we'll figure out what justice really means, out here where the fences run straight and true, but hearts are still trying to find their way.